Hey guys, welcome on in. So we're going to kick off the celebrations for Fading Dusk. We got a nice schedule today. Let me bring this up. How's it going? So we're going to go through a bunch of games. We got Tiberius and Askhati, so we're going to be joining a call with them. They're going to be casting a few games by some of the testers. So we're going to have JackoDerp versus Lylak, so that'll be really cool. They're going to spend the first 2.5 hours just kind of going through some of the basics of the game and little bits and pieces like that. And then we're going to take a short break, so about 30 minutes to about an hour, and come back around 3 o'clock GMT time. And at that stage, we're going to go through the process of essentially doing some 2v2s and some bigger multiplayer games, so you get to see some of that action. So really looking forward to that. But I'll jump on the call now. I'll be quiet for most of the rest of this first part of the stream. But if you have any questions or anything, pop them in the Twitch chat, and I can try direct it to the devs. So yeah, best of luck to you guys. Let me go over here and unmute it.
Like, what the
Hey,
hell? That doesn't make
Really?
sense.
hey guys, how's it going?
Hello.
So do we
Hey,
want to
man.
go
What's up,
through?
Jack?
Do you want to go through little introductions on who's who, just so people are familiar with the voices and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Tiberius, mapper, balancer, and sort of general gameplay designer for the mod.
Yeah, I'm Askhati. I'm one of the other developers. I do most of the what's it the art, so voxels, some of the cut and paste stuff. Um, yeah. I
Awesome.
also have the dubious distinction of never having played this mod multiplayer versus another human. After 8 months of development.
I'm sure that'll be changed today at some point.
Yeah, no, don't make me do this. Don't, it's embarrassing.
For sure. So I'm gonna hop off the mic and let you guys do your thing.
Great. Yeah. So what we have lined up for you today is we will be streaming some multiplayer between two of our best testers and doing some live commentary on that, and talking to you, thank you as well, about sort of the design decisions and what we're trying to do with the mod, as well as just what's currently going on in the game. So I think let's just jump into it and see where it takes us. All right. Just making sure. Thank you. Can you? Is the feed good? You can see things. All right. I'm starting the game.
I was just trying to watch both the Discord stream and the Twitch stream at the same time, and that was a bad idea.
Streamception. Yeah. Um, and yeah, feel free to ask questions while we're watching. Thank you. And fan questions are very welcome too.
Hmm.
All right. So yeah, this map is called Tainted Flow, and it's got sort of a, you can either choose to kind of go for the city here, which has the stuff with the flags on is capturable tech stuff. So if we have some factories here that will provide you money, they're basically an oil derrick in function. And this here is a civilian factory that's been sort of retrofitted to produce vehicles. You get access to some unique tech stuff, but it's also about the production speed bonus, so very valuable. And a big pit of Tiberium here to fight over. So, and some little blue island here, so plenty of objectives.
See, one of the first GDI, one of the new units that we added, the jump jet troopers from Vanilla Tiberian Sun. Interesting concept, but in game they were a bit twitchy. I don't want to say they were glitched, but you know the functionality didn't always work. So
Unreliable is the word I would use.
yeah, there are some different sentiments on that. So one of the first things that we did was to say, okay, we like the jump jet logic in terms of a unit, infantry unit that can transition between ground movement and flying unit. But the attack sequence for it is weird. I mean, the jump jet would sort of hover in place and not follow the target, or it would follow the target the whole time and not get into a position to actually fire. So it would just do random things, do this little dance in midair. So we thought, okay, let's actually replace it with a unit that relies on it uses the movement, the unique jump jet movement, but it doesn't have a weapon, And then the obvious solution to that was our modern day quadcopter drones, the type of thing that you buy, you hook it up to your iPhone or whatever, and then you've got a little flying camera that can look at anything on the map. So we thought, okay, cool, let's turn the jump jet trooper into that. So that's then where this little scout drone, you can just see the guy landing there, legs popping out. That's where the scout drones came from. And they are also very much intended as GDI's early game scouting option on the same level as the NOD attack buggies. Anyone that's played GDI with their ground forces will know that early game scouting is an absolute pain because you don't have fast units. Whereas if you play with NOD, you get the attack buggy and you can literally be, go from the one corner of the map to the opposite corner of the map in a couple of seconds. So the scout drone for GDI basically gives them their early game scout option. And other than that, they are also a great way to distract SAM sites while your bombers are on the way in. So sacrifice some scout.
They're also handy for revealing and sort of searching for stealth. That's another kind of unique thing to the jump jet is that he is flying infantry. So if you hover over or nearby a cloaked unit, they're revealed, and he's kind of good for that. And we generally just realized, well, the jump jets are basically just used for scouting, so let's sort of lean into that. And as the Scotty said, because GDI had such trouble with, like, we had the problem of often GDI would completely lose map control, not because they were underpowered, but because the scouting was so poor and so easy to deny that they just couldn't really get vision and get a hold of important map objectives like these, for example. And yeah, so this was both a solution to a technical and a balance problem. So yeah, we just thought lots of good reasons to go with this. Uh, huh. I do have game sound on. I'm not sure why. Hmm. Any? Do you know why that would? Because
I think it's related to your stream. I think when you start your stream, streaming into your screen. Oh.
All right. Yeah, let's take a look after, because if I alt tab now, it might
Might die out.
yeah.
Yeah, so we can see some of the new NOD units in action here on the left-hand side of the screen there. Those tanks, which are totally not modeled on the Soviet T-55. I mean, the resemblance is pure coincidence. That's the Ravager, very fast tank for NOD. And then we see the attack buggies there just with the new model, and they now have a rotatable turret instead of the fixed turret from before. Actually, Tiberius, you can tell people about the Ravager. I think that's kind of been your brainchild.
Yeah, so the Ravager was really born of a desire to give not a proper tank. The vanilla tick tank, fun concept on paper, but just a nightmare and really awkward balance-wise. But we quite liked the tick tank as an idea. So what we actually did was to make it what it, in my opinion, always should have been, sort of a secondary tank and more of a specialized support thing. So it leans more into the mobile turret role now and not have a proper main battle tank that is very fast. It's sort of a medium tank, light side of the medium spectrum, I'd say, but very fast, especially on pavement. Fighting not inside cities is dangerous.
You also see there was a NOD APC in action there, a flat slab of a unit that the guy used to bring his engineers into play there. So it's basically their early game APC. I just got blown up there. So instead of having to tech up all the way to tech level 3 before you get your subterranean APC, and then you can dig up into the enemy base from below, their new basic APC, it's the assault APC, allows you to get troops across the map early on in the game, and it also has a web thrower in a turret. So it can't kill enemy infantry, but it can web them in the same way that the Cyborg Reaper did in Firestorm.
Which makes for interesting synergy with the Rocket Trooper, because you can get in, web some infantry, and then have Rocket Trooper suddenly in a position where you really are hard countering the Titans that might now be left without infantry support. Also, we have an interesting situation here where I think that's Lylak. The GDI player has used the outpost system. This is a placeholder graphic, by the way. Don't worry, it won't remain a silo. To make an expansion node, no, I think blue is Lylak. Sorry, but yeah, the Nod player has taken control of the city. So these factories will provide him a steady flow of income, but he doesn't have an expansion. So they've sort of, as I said earlier, different options for focus on things on this map, and they've sort of each chosen their approach. This should be interesting.
Yeah, Danku, let me just quickly link you to the soundtrack there.
Some good mixed
no.
GDI units here. One thing that's interesting to note is I don't know if you can really tell on the stream, but some of the walkers actually use the vanilla Titans. Ooh.
There's a lot of ouchie being done there by the Helix.
Yeah, the Helix. We'll get back to that, but yeah, a lot of the walkers use the vanilla Titans legs, and this is actually a technique that Askhati came up with for a very easy way to make walkers without doing SHP work.
It was actually because normally if you want to do big mechs like that, you either have to do the mech completely from voxels, the 3D stuff, or an example of a voxel mech would be the Mammoth Mark II. Bit of a pain to animate, especially with some of the restrictions we face with the software.
Yeah, I think that's an understatement. Even.
Yeah, I'm being very polite when I say it that way. I mean, I do respect the people who put the HVA editor together years ago, but it hasn't really kept up with the time. Then the other option for doing mechs is to have a 3D model in something like, I don't know, 3D Studio Max or Blender, and then you animate it inside 3D inside the 3D app, turn it into a sequence of sprite frames, and then you end up with a unit which is entirely comprised of basically flat two-dimensional sprites. So an example of that would be the Wolverine. Now, if you're trying to put new mechs into your mod and you don't have the advantage of a 3D modeler on your team, doing new mechs is incredibly hard because you either have to make a voxel and then animate it by hand, which takes some time, and you lose hair in the process, or you need to go the 3D route. But if you don't have a 3D modeler, then that's going to turn into a big nothing burger. So I was looking at the way that the GI Titan Walker is put together, and the Titan is actually it's a mech with a turret. So when you look at the art file for the Titan, it comprises of a sequence of leg animations where the mech is basically walking in different directions, and then it has a second set of frames that make up the turret. So while I was looking at it, I realized that the Titan is actually funny in that regard because the legs on the Titan are a sprite or a sequence of sprites. The turret consists of a sequence of sprites, but the barrel on the original one was a voxel. So it was a 3D voxel, and it always looked really funny because it kind of twitched from left to right when you were playing and things like that. But the voxel barrel did have one big advantage. It allowed the barrel to kind of elevate or depress depending on the range to the target. So you had that effect of kind of, guys lobbing the shots at long range versus a depressed barrel at short range. So then my thinking was, okay, so if you take this composite model where it's a mixture of sprites and voxels, if you take the turret frames, which are sprites, and you make those frames blank, then you end up with a Titan where it's a set of legs an invisible turret, and then a voxel barrel floating in space. And then the very next step is to say, okay, what if we change the voxel barrel to actually look like the turret of the mech, right? And from that idea was born the first new mech that we added to the mod, which was the Javelin, the missile mech. And then we did the Hoplite in the same way, as well as the Phobos. So if you look at those 3 new units, all of them basically use the vanilla Titan legs, but then they have a voxel turret on top, which allows you to now quickly and easily implement new mechs into your mod as long as you can edit voxels. And it's quite a bit easier to find a voxel artist than a 3D artist at this point.
So we have some interesting mixed unit tactics here, and we can see the Lylak trying to use the tick tanks, which, by the way, are buffed in this mod, to sort of the deployed state is very, very sturdy now because it's a tier 2 unit, and we're sort of, with the new balancing and roster, we can sort of really balance it for that role. So yeah, very sturdy and very good at slowing down these GDI steamrolls here.
Ooh, I see the city has changed hands while I
Yeah,
was
see,
looking
what
at
what
that
happened
soundtrack.
was that the GDI player sort of he sort of steamrolled not a bit away to take control of the city. He brought the factories low, and then he used the amphibious APC to move in from the other side and capture them. Very smart.
Clever, very clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Lylak has gone all the way up to tier 4 here, so we see the Knoll artillery, and we see what is their sort of an advanced late game backliner to give some added punch to their formations. It's essentially a laser tank. It's very fragile, but it's actually fairly fast, and it does quite good damage, especially for its cost. So if you combine it with a proper tank line, or even better, one of these lines of chick tanks for protection, then you've got a powerful combo.
Mhm.
And I think that's sort of one of the biggest strengths of the mod. I would say that it really, at least from what I hear from testers, as well as my own opinion, is that it really succeeds in encouraging mixed unit tactics and really smartly using your full roster for putting attacks together and constantly countering the enemy. There's no more, just airlift disruptors all day, no more Titan spam. Titans have undergone a quite drastic rebalance. They are very powerful against heavy armor, but they're really bad at hitting small targets with their big new cannon. So they're actually way worse against infantry, and not even that great against light armor. So they are more specialized, but also very good at what they do.
It was one of the driving components behind most of the design choices for Fading Dusk was the idea that we specifically wanted. Oof,
I think.
that was quick.
All right,
That was sudden.
let's just try again. Yeah, sorry, folks. This happens due to the engine. Kind of random. Sorry.
Anyway, so what I was saying is one of the big design decisions that we were pushing right from the start was the idea that. Okay, guys, just sorting out things out. Yeah, one of the things that we wanted to push right from the start was the idea that you want to have a fun and a consistent multiplayer experience from the mods perspective. I think we've all played mods and we've all made mods where you make this absolute monster of new units that are extremely powerful, and they can kill half the enemy base from off the map away. And it's very easy to make fun, overpowered units like that. But from a multiplayer point of view, the gameplay experience then quickly devolves into a point where you rush your tech engine, you rush your tech levels up to the point where you can build this supremely overpowered unit, and then you just spam this overpowered unit, you run over your opponent, and it's, GG, good game. So we specifically wanted to, excuse me, we specifically wanted to not do that, which is why so many of the, excuse me, excuse me. Yeah, we specifically wanted to avoid that sense where multiplayer basically becomes tech rush to an overpowered unit, and then you just walk over your opponent. So getting balancing right in the mod is, I want to say, it's been 90% of our work for the past 7-8 months, ever since we started on it. What are you guys going on about accents now? What's this?
Starting a new game. This is actually a map made by Lylak, so this would be interesting to see if he can keep up on his own map. But yeah, Askhati's right. We really have been focusing on making a good multiplayer experience. So each unit is added with the utmost care. It's not that we haven't thought about, some cool factor, and we have had some designs that we really wanted to do, but we have paid very close attention to, each unit has to have a role, a point. We really wanted to avoid, the pitfall, as Askhati says, of, let's just add a bunch of cool stuff and some cool graphics, and it'll look great in screenshots, and maybe not play that well. We're not alluding to any specific mods here, by the way. It's just, I feel like it's a common pitfall for modders, in general, especially when you start a new project.
I mean, it's also from a coding perspective, it's fun. It's really fun to make new crazy units that push the boundary of the engine and what can be done with the code. And like you see how many weapons you can combine into a single unit, and an airburst weapon that turns into a second airburst. And there's it's really it's fun and challenging and exciting to do that. But the problem is, if you leave those prototype units in the game, then your multiplayer experience becomes a bit rubbish, honestly. It's just because then the game is always won by the first guy who gets his tech level high enough to get to this Godzilla unit that just destroys everything on the map. So yeah, like I said, 7-8 months of balancing on GDI and NOD, and
adding
it's
new units, testing unit, add new unit, thoroughly test unit, and so forth. Like, we really have been methodical, careful, and we really hope that it will shine through in the multiplayer, and it's why we wanted you to experience some of our best players going at it today. But yeah, it's also easy to, when you're doing let's just do a bunch of cool stuff, to have a lot of units that end up not really having a point, like what's often referred to as bloat, where half of your roster, I mean, they look great, but they don't really have a well-defined role in the game. They don't really have something that they were added to counter, or to, like, some weakness that they were added to cover, that's just kind of there. And again, we really, really wanted to avoid that, which is why what vanilla units we do have left have often also had somewhat extensive rebalancing. So I can almost promise, I hope I can, that you won't see, things might look very vanilla, because we haven't really been focusing so much on flashy graphics, as we said. But you won't experience just vanilla Tiberian Sun meta. And I've been told by Lylak, one of the testers playing right now, that one of the first things that he had to realize is you have to throw away your bad habits from vanilla Tiberian Sun. They're not going to get you anywhere here.
Yeah, so I see there was a question here that Danku raised. Someone was asking, why was the Forgotten Wars mod abandoned, and will some of the assets from that be used in Fading Dusk? So just a bit of context there. Forgotten Wars was the working title for the mod that I was working on most of last year. Typical, pandemic hits, everyone's suddenly sitting at home, working from home. So I had more free time, got back into Tiberian Sun modding, and I brushed off an old project that I'd been working on way back since I think it was 2010 when the first iteration of the mod started. And that mod was called Forgotten Wars. And Forgotten Wars had a very simple premise. I wanted to add a third playable faction, which was the Forgotten. And then later on, it turned into adding a fourth playable faction, which was Cabal. So I'm not going to pretend that I get bonus points for originality there. I mean, adding the Forgotten and Cabal to a Tiberian Sun mod is pretty much the equivalent of putting butter on your toast at this point after 20 years of modding. But that's what I was doing. I mean, it's, I hadn't touched Tiberian Sun in 10 years. Got back into it, had a lot of fun. And then I got involved with some other projects in the community. Middle of last year, worked with some other people. That's how I met Tiberius and Flame, our American animator, who I think at this point, because of the time zones, still sleeping. Although he's also a teenager, so they sleep most of the day anyway. So I was working on Forgotten Wars, and then through that, like I said, I met Tiberius, and then a lot of the thinking and a lot of the art assets behind Forgotten Wars then rolled over into Fading Dusk, which is where a lot of the Forgotten assets in Fading Dusk come straight from Forgotten Wars. But Forgotten Wars in itself, I guess you can say it's been abandoned, but I more like to say that Forgotten Wars has kind of grown and evolved into what we see here now, which is Fading Dusk. So yeah, I guess it was an evolution. Because the problem is, if you're working on a solo project, which Forgotten Wars was, it was basically me, myself, and I just doing things in the code, making art assets. If you're working on solo projects, you might put ideas into your mod that you think are amazing and they blow your mind. But if anyone else sees it, within 2 seconds, they can point out to you, okay, this concept is going to be a big problem. This unit is going to break balancing. This aircraft type, it looks great on paper. It's going to suck in real life. It's going to in multiplayer. So in that sense, getting Tiberius on board, especially with his multiplayer experience, was a great benefit to the mod, because he was the voice of reason for a lot of my crazier ideas. So yeah,
it goes the other way too sometimes, though. But yeah, in terms of balancing and gameplay design, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that I hope that answers the question around Forgotten Wars. I still need to clean up the entry for that on PPM forums. I need to talk to Banshee about that. But yeah, Forgotten Wars has effectively evolved into Fading Dusk.
So to answer what's probably going to be the next question, yes, we are planning to add the Forgotten. They're in the works, and we're very actively working on them at the moment. Actually, they're just a little bit rough around the edges. Like, they have a few like some technical hiccups right now that resulted in us saying we don't want to show them off today, at least not a full game, because yeah, they're a little rough around the edges, but the ideas are there, and it's a question of time before we add them. Like, it's not that there's any uncertainty. There's just some stuff that still needs doing.
Yeah, like as I was saying earlier, for the past few months, because the Forgotten were kind of our, how can I phrase this now? I don't want to say they were a back burner faction, but I had some struggles getting the third faction logic to work properly in Tiberian Sun, mostly because old Tiberian Sun wasn't really designed for more than 2 factions. So you have GDI and Nod, and a lot of the engine, the way the engine was coded and implemented back in, 1998, 1999, a lot of those decisions revolved around, okay, we are only ever going to have 2 playable factions. So the moment you try and add a third faction, like the Forgotten, or a fourth faction like Cabal, things get weird and interesting in the code. A lot of workarounds and things like that.
Not to interrupt you, but we're going to see trikes now.
Oh, we're going to see trikes?
Yeah, we're going to see trikes now. And we're also seeing Pyro Grenadiers, which a unit that took us some time to really nail down, because I felt the need in the balancing. Ooh, some raiding going on here. Yeah, I felt the need balance-wise to have sort of the classic Nod Flame Trooper to have a counter to, because when we made the disc troopers better, blobbing them got a little out of hand. But
Yeah, the disc.
we weren't really happy with just adding like a World War II style flamethrower and calling it a day. It felt too. It wasn't really interesting, and it's been done a gazillion times, and it also almost felt too old school. Our mod is set post Firestorm, by the way, a year after. So yeah, we ended up actually adding a pyro grenadier, so the huge fire grenade. That's the guy you see here. Which also helped with balancing because it allows him to get some shots off despite the grenadiers having decent range, which can be sort of amplified by firing on the ground and then bouncing the discs. So the unit we have here is the Nod Attack Trike, which is one of my personal favorite additions.
It's
because
very annoying. It's very annoying.
And it is designed to be annoying. It is it sort of adds a third option to your combined recon raids here, and it's a trike carrying a mortar, so it's sort of a pseudo artillery. So it has the range to just about outrange most defenses and most units. It's not fully phased artillery, but it's fast. So when you combine it with Nod's classic, excellent recon rates, you get a real pain in the ass. Really fun to use and takes some thought to counterplay. But as we can see here, javelins are great at just that.
Yeah, the javelin we initially added. It was literally the first unit that I did that combination of adding. We can see the Phobos, those big mechs in the front with the big chain guns. That's the Phobos. They're basically the counter to Nod's scout swarms. So Nod likes to use their attack buggies, attack cycles, and the attack trike.
They're one of the options.
One of the options, yeah.
We like to have several possible ways to approach a problem, and the Phobos is certainly one of them. But lots going on the map here, fighting over this factory was destroyed. That one's still up, and an expansion. Okay, this is looking good for Lylak. Denying GDI an expansion here. He's really taking map control with this recon blob now. The trikes coming into play, and GDI just not being able to keep up. The javelins here are great though at intercepting them because they have the range for it and are not that slow compared to some other GDI units. The thing to note here, Conyards are very sturdy in this mod. I wanted to finally have a Tiberian Sun mod where the multiplayer isn't just who can rush the other guy's Conyard the fastest. Killable, of course, but usually you'll want something that's really a designated building killer to deal with them. So you're not going to just bike rush the enemy's MCV.
Yeah, the Javelin, like I was saying earlier, the Javelin was my first experimentation with that new method of adding mechs to your mod, where you use the sprite legs and then the voxel turret. And they might have been influenced by some mech warrior mech designs, whose name I shall not mention. But the idea was basically you have a walker, big missile racks on the side, and it's basically an artillery unit, slightly more mobile than something with treads or tracks.
I wouldn't call it artillery. I'd call it fire support. It's comparable to the trike, really. It's a backliner that sort of specialized at just being annoying and hammering, especially lighter targets. The thing with the javelins that's interesting to note and a bit of a unique concept to this mod is we have some units that trade. They might appear to be armor penetrating, but that's not the whole story. They usually trade some power for either range or speed, or so you've got, for example, the javelin here shoots a salvo of these mini rockets, which, as you can see, have a very long range, but they don't have particularly big warheads, so they're not really good against heavy armor, actually, but for sniping enemy artillery, recon, they can even decently accurately, as we see here, hit enemy infantry, so they're sort of a vehicle sniper, really.
Yeah, so initially they started out as basically a walking artillery piece, and then balancing, testing, back and forth, they ended up in their current configuration, where it's a heavy mech. It can take quite a bit of damage. And the idea is, as Tiberius pointed out here, you would use your javelin missile mechs to essentially wade through an enemy artillery barrage and snipe out the enemy artillery pieces if they're not defended. Because the javelins, they don't really have the speed to rush in and kill artillery in the same way that the Nod trike has, but they've got the hit points, so they just beef it out. They get close, they soak up the damage, and then they just punch everything with their rockets, and then you can get rid of those pesky artillery pieces, as you might have noticed.
Your frontliners sort of wade through the Nord hordes, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, combined arms really, really important here, and good micromanagement. Targeting the right things with the right units. Interesting fight we saw before, where there was some. He set up some ticks right in the enemy base and sort of tried to push his way in there whilst having artillery backup. But the javelin sniped the artillery, and he was forced to retreat. He didn't have the damage to power through that anymore. Here we see the Black Hand snipers, which use not just normal sniper rifles, but anti-material rifles. So they'll actually, aside from, of course, sniping infantry, they can actually do decent damage to some lighter vehicles and are good for sort of yanking down hover MLRS.
Yes.
Good helix rates here.
Yeah, the helix was one of those units that we added in for Nod, because Nod's air options initially were pretty much limited between a attack helicopter with a little minigun on it, the Harpy, and then on the other end of the extreme you had a flying UFO tech in the Banshee, which you needed to tech up all the way to tech level 3 before you could build them. So we thought, okay, let's put something in the middle that offers a new capability, so not anti-aircraft like the Harpy, and not sort of general purpose plasma damage like the Banshee. Let's put something in the middle, which in this case turned out to be anti-vehicle. And we can see them. The Helix is basically a high-speed tank hunter. So for most Command & Conquer games, if you think tank hunter, you think of something like the A-10 Warthog. It's basically a flying chain gun.
The Soviet MiG is probably the closest analog. Yeah.
So in this case, the Helix is basically what Nod uses to punch out GDI mechs. If you have enough Helixes, you can keep hitting GDI from the air. You just keep hitting those big mechs, wear them down, and then you can rush in with faster, smaller units, which can then have a slightly better chance of actually punching out the GDI mechs that are left, sort of the damaged ones.
Yeah, it really adds to that Nod-like gameplay of wearing down GDI as they approach to try and steamroll you and then rush in for the kill. I feel like they fit Nod so perfectly. I'm almost surprised that Westwood themselves didn't engage in something like this. A fast hunter that's good at punching armor. I mean, what could be more Nod? That was a good flank there.
That was a good snipe. That was such a good snipe. Yeah. So we see yeah, go for it.
No, just note that the stealth tanks actually use the multi-rockets from the Cyborg Reaper. So they punch hard. They get in there. They hurt.
That is a big cluster of
trying to tank his way to killing the Phobos and not quite getting there.
Almost got there though. The Phobos.
Yeah, I think if he'd had more ticks and deployed them, he would have made it. But on his helix side too, the javelins also do have anti-air. Not fully reliable because the rockets in this game can be a little wonky and can sort of fizzle out if the aircraft, especially if it's fast. So the hoplite, which I'm marking here, is actually a hit scan tier 1 anti-air option for GDI, which it's not very good at fighting ground, although a group of them can deter a recon raid, and they can be good at that because they're the fastest of the mechs. but it's more so to give GDI a very reliable anti-air option. Oh, good snipe again there. Wow, Lylak is killing it in this game.
Microwaving those stealth tanks.
Yeah, because we found that the hover MLRS, especially, and just generally, like GDI only had these slow rockets for anti-air, and it was just unreliable. And when we added something like the Helix, it suddenly really highlighted how bad that actually was. So with GDI, you have some choices. You know, the ATMLRS or the Javelin for utility, but if you want some pure anti-air action, you go for the Hoplite.
Yeah, the hoplite is great in that regard. Low
Look how fast
damage.
they are.
Yeah, they're also a bit of a scout unit. So they're obviously not nearly as fast as your nod reconnaissance units like the buggies and the cycles. But with the hoplites, if you have a couple of them, you can use them
got it
to
just
essentially.
in time.
Pardon?
Sorry. Yeah, a stealth tank managed to, like, it fired and then it died and then the rockets landed and killed the harvester. It was beautiful.
Oh, gorgeous. So what makes the hoplites nice at tier 1 is, so yes, they provide anti-air cover. So when you get those harassing raids from RPs, I keep wanting to say Apaches, when you get those harassing raids from RPs early on, your hoplites can take care of that quite easily. Ooh, you just see that Nod Air Force, those Helix units really, really, that's a good return on investment, because if you have a well-managed Helix squadron of 3 to 4 units, they fly out, they kill a Titan, they go back, they reload. They fly out again, they kill another.
Not gonna lie, at one point I actually thought Lylak was gonna get steamrolled, and he just beautifully turned it around with the snipes, like the Helix and the stealth tank use, and then he built himself up. This was beautiful. I'm glad we got to see this.
Well, get the new Orcas. The Orca fighters that we see here, performance-wise, they're pretty much identical to vanilla. We just updated the voxel art for them, because if you look at the vanilla voxel, it actually has no cockpit. There's a gaping hole where the cockpit voxels need to be. So
Sorry to interrupt, but just as you can see here, even lighter tanks will actually eventually get worn down by the Phobos. So, like, they're not great against heavy armor, but if there's a blob of them, you don't want to just bunch up a bunch of units and get in their face, like, because the AOE alone is going to be a good return on investment then.
Because what Nod does quite often with their reconnaissance unit is you get that blob of attack buggies, the attack cycles, and trikes now as a new unit. And when you're facing a blob like that, if you have units that do pinpoint damage, like the Titan, for example, the Javelin, it's great for dealing a lot of damage to a single target, but it takes you a while to work through all of those targets. So the Phobos is effectively saying, if I have 20 targets in front of me, I'm going to do a bit of damage to 8 or 9 of them every single time I fire. So the moment you're facing your blobs, so the moment you face your blobs, you bring out the Phobos, and then the blob has a choice. Either the blob stays and gets ground down, or the blob has to run away. And it's usually 50-50 there, but depends on what the player really feels up to. We see some Nod commandos there.
Yeah, using a Tiberian rifle.
Yeah.
Sort of the latest development in Nod. You know, they had the Chem Warriors in the first game, you know, in Tib Wars and DTA and stuff. And we kind of thought, like, why was that just straight up abandoned? So this is somewhat inspired as well by a rifle from Renegade.
The Tiberian shard rifle.
And Jacko calls the DG.
Guys.
Well played, both of you.
Sorry, let me quickly look at the Twitch questions here. I'm sort of scrolling through it. Oh yeah, someone was asking here about, would we want to add Cabal, and then would we want to add other factions? So first part of the question, adding Cabal, Tiberius and I have had many discussions about it, back and forth. Currently, there is no plan to add Cabal, even though I do quite enjoy the idea of turning Cabal into Skynet, no particular reason. But then on the second question, if we have plans for other factions, we specifically have plans to put in sub-factions for GDI and Nod. So our third faction will be the Forgotten. They will be become well, they are playable at some point, but we'll show them eventually once they're in a showcaseable form. But then we will have a GDI sub-faction called Rapid Response. It will basically... Okay, so we'll have a GDI sub-faction called Rapid Response, and we will have a NOD sub-faction called the Heavy, or the Heavy Assault faction. And the idea is the two sub-factions will effectively allow you to play as that faction, but using your opponent's playstyle. So what that means is GDI's normal playstyle is slow, heavy, armored steamroller. And NOD's usual playstyle is high-speed, mobility, hit and run, etc. So the idea is...
I just want to interject. It's not about like changing up and yeah, we basically wanted an excuse to design these units, but not take away from the core identity of the faction. So these are, you see them as, special forces. Like they make up a small portion of their main faction, and they're sort of specialized in making up for that faction's typical weaknesses.
Yeah, so the idea behind Rapid Response is if you play as GDI Rapid Response, your play style will become more fast-paced hit and run in the same way as a NOD traditional player. And then when you play as NOD's Heavy Assault sub-faction, your play style is going to become more, armored assault steamroller in the same way as a traditional GDI player. So those are some of the initial thinkings around that concept.
And also we wanted it to still make sense, of course. So we thought about, okay, what, like the rapid response, for example, are called so because they are meant to be GDI sort of, first boots on the ground, scout corps, and response to, especially when there's some not fueled insurrection somewhere, and they're kind of focused on being good at urban combat as well. So yeah, they're a fast response special forces before the heavy hitters can make their way in. The heavy assault NOD is interesting because aside from being heavy assault, they sort of carry a bit of Cabal's legacy. They're going to be very cyborg focused, and the thinking is that NOD's general distrust of the cyborg tech after the Firestorm crisis leads them to largely abandon it, but still they still have this special unit that specializes in them, but with some changes and updates, and also with carrying on some of Cabal's tech and research that he did. So it's going to be not, but a little pseudo Cabal. So again, it's. I think some Cabal ideas were rolled into them as well, and yeah, they're just going to be very cybernetic and spooky, hopefully kind of crazy. Yeah, they're going to be scary to play against, I think.
Yeah, so we've already done a bit of development on them, unit concepts. I've made some voxels, and then yeah, as we build things up, we'll eventually they will eventually then become fully playable. The idea with their sub-factions also was we didn't really want to do sub-factions in the same way that Red Alert 2 did their sub-factions, where, for example, each sub-faction only got one unique object, in a sense. So if you play as Red Alert 2 Americans, you get paradrops. And if you play as Red Alert 2 the French, you get the Grand Cannon. Or if you play as the British, you get the Sniper. But everything else is exactly the same. So your gameplay experience, whether you're playing as the
Even
French...
Kane's Wrath kind of did the, at least like half the units were still the same.
Yeah, so, and what we're specifically trying to do with our sub-factions, I mean, this is the planning, obviously, it's still going to be quite a bit of work to get everything done, is that your sub-faction will have mostly unique units. Your harvesters are going to look different, your infantry are going to be different, your vehicles, your majority of your vehicle fleet is going to be entirely different, your air force is going to be different. The only thing that will be very much same between the vanilla faction and the sub faction is going to be the building roster and the art for them. So I mean, a GDI power plant is a GDI power plant is a GDI power plant. I mean, there's no real point in making a light high speed power plant for the rapid response sub faction, for example.
But I don't think it's out of the question for us to add a few variations or outliers.
Yeah, there will be some custom things. For example, the heavy assault faction, for example, will have cybernetics facilities that will give different functions, unlock abilities, things like that. Rapid response GDI, for example, will have far more emphasis on Air Force as well. But yeah, overall, their buildings will be the same, but your unit experience in terms of the army that you build up and send into the field is going to be, I want to say, 75% or more unique.
Yeah, so I put it at 85 plus almost, at least with what we have now. It's turning out that way so far.
Yeah. A lot of times with the, and it's one of the synergies that Tiberius and I have on this mod that it's been working very well for us thus far is we get ideas, and then I get some crazy idea in my head. I start making voxels, and then I show Tiberius the voxel, and then it's a case of, either we have an existing unit role where this unit could now work well, or it's a case of, okay, we don't immediately need a nod heavy tank with, a double barrel anti-tank gun and a bunch of rocket launchers on the back. It doesn't really fit into the classic nod feel, but it would work well for heavy assault. So then we make the unit, we put it in game, we test it quickly, and then we park it essentially for the sub faction. Same with the rapid response. We've already actually made a whole bunch of the units, sort of high-speed hover units, rocket units, etc. They're all in the game already. We just don't use them yet because they don't fit into the vanilla functions. Once the sub factions go live, then it's just a case of changing one or two lines of code, and then the unit is done. So
a lot of it also is the other way, like what do we want for the sub faction? How do we want to put them together? And then we design a unit according to that. So I'd say it's a bit of both.
Definitely.
But yeah, it's the sub factions are really fun for us, to be honest, for development, because it allows us to subvert and sort of play around with the faction's identity and their approach to, because we still want, for example, rapid response GDI to feel like GDI, so it will still have tech that's iconic to them, like sonic emitters and rail guns and stuff like that. It's just that they're gonna have a different doctrine, but their visual design and their unique technologies they'll still feel GDI, hopefully. And here we see the Orca Hunter, which is a chain gun armed Orca. Again, good for taking out those the man spam and general blobbing of infantry, light units, etc.
Man spam. That's interesting too.
I actually I gotta admit I shamelessly stole that from a CNC3 streamer. It just sounded good.
Yeah. Ooh, we can see those hunters. They don't necessarily. So the Orca Hunter is basically it has a chain gun. It does a little strafing attack, and then it immediately has to fly back to base to reload. So it's not a loitering unit. It can't stay on the battlefield and keep doing a trickle of damage over time. It goes in single pulse of damage, and then it has to fly back. Obviously, they are the tier 1 air unit for GDI. It's a new unit that we've added. They fill a roughly similar role to the Harpy on the Nod side. So it's an infantry, it's an anti-infantry unit, whereas the Harpy is more of a loitering unit because it has so much ammo. The Hunter goes in, does a single pulse of area of effect damage, and then it bails back. So obviously, if you have a pack of two or three of these Hunters flying circuits, where the one Hunter will do damage, go back to reload, then the second Hunter is ready to go, does the attack run, goes back. You can wear down infantry groups over time. Obviously, if the infantry group sneaks into your base and you don't have the luxury of time to reload your Hunters the whole time, then you're gonna have a bad time. But they do offer that option.
So just to get back to the game, Lylak lost some ground here. He tried to harass these harvesters and got stomped for it, but he seems to be gaining some ground up here in the north side of the map, and that's what Nod is about, of course. That map control and really forcing GDI out of position and really screwing with them.
We see those Nod tanks there, the light ones. Those are the Scorpions. It's basically Nod's low-level anti-aircraft tank.
Mid-tier.
Mid-tier, yeah. So similar, how can I say, operational requirement as we had with the hoplite. You need something that can always hit enemy aircraft more reliably than rockets can. Rockets do, it's awesome damage, but the rockets tend to miss, and they take a while to get to the target and things like that. So the Scorpion basically comes in. It says, I can hit air units. I'm very good at hitting air units. I do, small to medium amount of damage. I've got short to medium range. But if you fly over me, I will hit you, and I will keep hitting you as long as you're within range. And we saw that with the Orca Hunters attacking that Nod group there. 2 Hunters went in. Only one of them went back to base. The other one ended up splattered there.
And Jacko being just forced back by the sheer damage of these artillery. He needs to deal with this somehow. I think he's bringing in some javelins now and trying to wear him down with the hunters.
Yeah, see, this is where the javelins with their artillery sniping, they really excel, because they can soak up that counter fire for a while, or at least for long enough. Obviously now the artillery units are focused on the javelins, so now the javelins are not having a good time.
There were just too few of them, and they took some rocket soldier hits. He should have brought the discs in sooner. Okay, he's just trying to steamroll it now. He's just going for it.
Here we go. Ooh.
Oh, ouch. And they get flanked by the bikes. Oh, wow. Lylak is on fire today.
Wait, is he ever not on fire?
I have actually had a bit of a win streak against him recently, but I think he's back with a vengeance.
We can see that there's some.
Damn.
Yeah, see, the moment GDI, or for any faction, we saw this earlier when the Nod attack group got beaten back from the air, and now we're seeing the GDI attack group getting beaten back from the air. Once again, if you neglect your anti-air cover here, you provide a golden opportunity for your opponent to punch you in the head repeatedly, and it's not going to be a good time, especially with the new air units that we added.
Yeah, aircraft is definitely important. It's like it doesn't devolve into air spam. We have avoided that, I'd say. But yeah, aircraft is important, and generally, again, this combined arms approach is just everything in this mod. If like you're not gonna get away with just spamming one thing and just calling it a day. That's what we wanted to avoid with this.
Nod or field guns. I see someone in the stream comments was actually talking about the Tiberian Dawn units. Yeah, the Nod field gun was there's no small inspiration that came from Tiberian Dawn. But the idea is they provide slightly more mobile fire support. Whoops, yeah, and then the hunters taking their pound of flesh, they're starting to do damage.
Yeah,
but yeah, the field guns can be a pain in the backside if you leave them. If you try and ignore them, they make you pay. Oh, here we see the counterattack. Titans.
Yeah, I think he's just getting sick of the field gun shenanigans. He had it with that. Oh wow. Now I'm actually curious to see if that pays off, what he just did. Because this big tank line is going to be painful to deal with.
Plus, he has, if you look at those infantry guys, you can see the red targeting lasers there. Those guys with the targeting lasers are the Black Hand snipers, the guys we mentioned earlier that have the anti-material rifles. The anti-material rifles are great versus infantry, and as you can see, those Wolverines, just popping like balloons there. They're also great against scout units. Ooh, yeah, see, one more hit from the Orca Hunter, and that sniper group is gone. Well, yeah, here comes the NASCAR
really
group.
See the ticks in action. Like they might not have very good range. They might be immobile, but as a wall, if you can get them into a good position, the enemy is going to have such a tough time just outlasting you, even though they don't deal a ton of damage. They're just gonna
Whittle
kill
away
you
at
by
it.
survival. Like, they are such a pain to remove from a key spot.
Oh, guys are doing well.
Yeah, getting some good games here. Lylak is on fire with the flanks today.
Oh,
But yeah, I think we really saw Lylak use a bit of everything here. Tanks, artillery, infantry, air. He has a soft spot for the helixes. He really likes those.
the helix is.
Jacko has to go already.
Oh, is he off for the now? Okay. Okay, who's up? Who's up next in the testing slot?
I guess if Flame still isn't here, I
Flame
guess I
said-
could jump into to a game or two against Lylak. So
Oh,
yeah, will you take over the commentary, Askhati?
yeah, I'll run with the commentary. Who is going to do our observer in game? Can we use Danku for that?
Oh yeah, yes. I think Danku, could you come in here and provide spectation, which is still totally a word.
So, for anyone watching, Tiberius and Lylak. So Tiberius is our main developer for balancing and keeping some of my crazy ideas in check, which I suppose is a form of balancing itself. And Lylak, we recruited actually quite early on. I think he came to us from the Regular 2 community.
Yeah, he did.
And yeah, between Lylak and Tiberius, they are pretty much the two heavyweights / giants in terms of PvP for this mod. So what we are about to see going forward is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure how good I'll be at multitasking, chatting with you guys and playing, but I'll try my best.
No, go for it. Focus on the game. I'll keep up the chatter. Danku, you're welcome. You're more than welcome to ask questions as well if you have anything. I'm trying to keep sort of my eyes split here between the stream and the feed, the question feed on the side here. But yeah, I actually do want to give a shout out to our testing team: Tiberius, Lylak, Jacko, Fefe, Flame Wheel, other Flame who's not here yet. Everyone who's been helping with testing. You guys have done a phenomenal job over the past few months. Well, not past few months, since the start of the year. And a lot of what we have achieved here, especially the balance in gameplay, would not have happened without you guys. So from my side, I do want to make sure that you guys understand how much we appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Jacko is pulling out, okay.
Okay, just, yeah, I think our Lilacs and my games tend to be best when I do not, and he just TDI, because I'm not as good at TDI as he is, so...
Okay.
Get the most
We'll see how it goes.
games here. TR fans might recognize this map, or at least the map concept. All right.
Oh, this one. Oh, I remember this one.
All right, let's do this. I guess I should opt out of the chat for a bit, or at least mute it, so I don't get spoilers.
Yeah. Just do a full mute on your side.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just disconnect from chat and be back later. Okay, guys.
All right, cool.
All right.
See you in a bit.
Yeah.
Then. Okay, let's switch over the streams. Yeah, so now this is now going to be our heavyweight fight for the night, or the day. What's going on here? Yeah, so I'm trying to think what else was there. What else was there to cover? We did see a lot of action with the previous maps around the civilian assets on the map, the structures that can get captured, things like that. What's happening on the side here? Yeah. So it was actually one of the things that we took a fair bit of inspiration from Red Alert 2 in that sense, was the idea that you start your multiplayer map and then you have civilian structures, your tech structures, which can be captured to provide additional functionality and bonuses to the controlling player. So the famous one, the very famous one from Red Alert 2 was the oil derrick structure. You capture that, it gives you money without you needing to harvest. So obviously, if you control enough, there we go. Our stream. Oh, there we go. Okay. Why does that look so small? There we go. Oh, minor glitch here. Yeah, no stress, no stress. Oh, we're in. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, so one of the things that we really wanted to bring in from Red Alert 2 was that idea of having tech structures that you can then grab it with an engineer, and then you get some type of a bonus, which is then when we started exploring with things like the industrial factories, which provide you with money, the power plants, which you can capture. Very fragile, the power plants actually, but once you control them, they provide you with quite a massive boost in power. You can see here the civilian armory, which is left over from old Tiberian Sun in the middle there. Yeah, you send your infantry in there, and then when the infantry unit comes out, it has been promoted to elite veterancy. So usually more hit points, more health, more damage, things like that. Hospital as well there with a little flashing red cross on top. So yeah, we took some of these because the civilian armory and the civilian hospital are present in vanilla Tiberian Sun. They just don't do anything. So we re-enabled them here, made them useful, and then we started adding the new tech structures as well, the industrial plants, the civilian vehicle factory that you can capture. It gives you both a vehicle production bonus as well as access to new civilian vehicles in the form of tanks, armored personnel carriers, artillery pieces, things like that. We can see here one of the big advantages that Nod has with reconnaissance forces early in the game is you can take your buggy and effectively rush through the enemy base to immediately get an idea of what's going on there. It's kind of difficult to stop. You need either choke points that are well guarded or something very fast early on to stop that type of scouting. And because GI can generally not stop that type of scouting early in the game, it was one of the other big drivers behind why we decided to give GDI the scout drone as a counter. Because in the same way that a GI player cannot counter the buggies early on, the Nod player is also very difficult to counter scout drones early on. Because you pretty much need to tech up to your radar station, and then you need to build SAM sites, and only then does your base become difficult to penetrate by the scout drones. Prior to that, you need to rely on your rocket infantry, the Nod rocket infantry, to provide anti-air protection. And if you don't have those, then the GI scout drones can fly pretty much at free will over your base and, get a very good idea of where you are, what you're doing, what you're building, etc., things like that. So we can see here this map has some leftover structures from the previous war. You can see something with 40. Everything's kind of smashed up. We put some new civilian structures in there as well. You can see some of the structures actually look infested with Tiberium and Tiberium growths. We were trying to expand the terrain there a bit. Oh, we can see a Nod attack group here moving off. The Ravagers are an absolute pain, as we have seen multiple times in the past now. If you can sneak those into an unprotected place. Although I do see a counter moving in there. Yeah. So in a one-on-one fight, roughly, in a one-on-one fight between a GDI Titan and a Nod Ravager tank, the Titan is always going to win. Where the terrain decor is old wrecked Nod artillery piece from Tiberian Dawn. Where the Titan, so your Titan will always win the one-on-one, but the Ravager, of course, has the advantage that it is, I think, twice the speed at this point, and they can just move in packs and get around the Titans in a way that the Titans just simply cannot manage. So we were trying to avoid that, how can I say, that almost chess experience where you have two factions that on the surface appear to be very different, but their balance would be exactly the same. I mean, that's not really fun. I mean, it's entirely pointless. If GDI and Nod both have a main battle tank that plays the same, if they both have an attack buggy or a Humvee that plays the same, if they both have artillery pieces that play the same, then eventually you just end up with, both factions are just, the one is just a reskin of the other one. There's no playable difference between, no effective difference. So very much trying to avoid that. I can see Tiberius. Tiberius is playing as, here we see Air Force, those are Orca fighters. They are anti-armor. We will see them punch holes in something now. And we see the Helix going the other way. See those Helixes are going to start punching Titans now. And the response to that is to get anti-air cover up. See the Orca fighters harassing Orca fighters driving the Nod vehicles off there. Obviously now this is where your Nod player will start building the Scorpion tank, which is your mid-tier anti-aircraft, and the GDI player to defend themselves against the vortexes. They will now start building hoplites. For example, I can see the Nod player here is starting to build flame tanks. Flame tanks are the subterranean units. They come in from below surface, and then they start doing flame damage. Very painful if you are not prepared for them. Very annoying. They can, if they go after fragile buildings, they can be quite a pain here. So, I think it's developing nicely. I'm seeing very big army buildups here. We can see the GDI player has some hoplites out now, so his anti-aircraft protection is coming out. We can see the hoplites in action there. So the next time the vortexes come in for an air raid, they will take some damage, maybe even lose one or two of their planes. You see the Orca fighters going off for another harassing run there. This is where the investment in an air force is it's a bit of a gamble. If you rush to develop your air force too early, then you can find yourself in a situation where you have an air force but no ground vehicles, and then in the time that it takes your air force to reload, the enemy ground forces will basically pour into your base, wipe things out, and that's GG right there. The downside is if you don't invest in an air force, then you miss out on the opportunity to harass the enemy player for free, between air quotes, while he's gathering his forces. So as we saw here a couple of minutes before, the Nod forces parked in the middle of the map and being essentially helpless against GDI air force harassment. Mostly because they didn't have anti-air protection, but the idea being, if you can find your opponent's vehicles when they are moving or sitting and waiting somewhere, if they don't have anti-air cover, you can hit them from the air repeatedly, and it basically counts as a free hit because they can't defend themselves. So you can wear down their forces quite effectively and quite quickly from the relative safety of your elevation of your forces. So you see how GI player is expanding, getting his first colony out there. And the Nod player the same. We can actually see the Nod expansion vehicle here. You can see that cloaked structure in the middle of the map there. That is the Nod expansion node, which is the tunnel node. So it effectively, the concept or the lore behind the tunnel node is that it is a access point to the Nod subterranean tunnel network, which they use to move around their subterranean APCs, the flame tanks, the Montauk command vehicle, etc. So the tunnel node is then effectively an entrance to that global tunnel network, which pops up. It's disguised, or it's cloaked in this case, And then once that point is up, you can then start a nod colony around that. So the beauty of it is you can deploy a tunnel node, then immediately next to it you deploy a stealth generator, which then provides a cloaking aura. Then once you have the stealth generator up, you can essentially build a colony that is completely and utterly hidden from your opponent until something leaves that cloak radius. So that's something that's quite fun to see when people build colonies that are effectively unseen until someone stumbles onto a harvester, or a harvester walks out from underneath the cloak radius, and then suddenly you realize that there's not a colony there. Let me just quickly check the stream comments here. New buildings, just mixing the old ones. Can't you make completely new ones? We can make completely new ones, but it has the same limitation as we've mentioned before with mechs making custom walkers, is the idea that you need a 3D modeler to model a new building completely from scratch, and that requires you need to recruit developers or artists that are 3D capable and have the time and the free time to commit to that. And unfortunately, those people are rare. Not everyone who does 3D work is interested in working on Tiberian Sun, or they might not be interested in your particular project. Or people also have real life kicks in. You get involved with the project, and then suddenly your work schedule changes, your home environment changes, your university schedule changes, and you just end up no longer having the time to do these things which previously were so important to you. So yeah, we do have a 3D animator on board, actually, Flame from the US. But I mean, his time is limited, and I think for something that you do as a hobby, you can't realistically expect someone. How can I say it? You can't force someone to work on a project, especially when there are real life priorities that they prioritize. So in that sense, we haven't added many new buildings that are completely and utterly new. But I've been using kind of base techniques to just mix match old buildings into new configurations. From a stylistic point of view, that actually helps a bit, because if you make new buildings that are basically recombinations of the old ones, you end up with an art style or a visual style in game that is very consistent. Excuse me. For a lot of mods that add new building assets in, and new vehicle assets, things like that, it's great that you have new art assets. But often, if the art styling is not the same, then you can immediately notice that the art styling is not the same. Color schemes are different, perspectives are different, shadows, things like that. So in that sense, to interrupt myself there, we can see the GDI player add a Sonic Dragoon, which is basically a hover tank with a disruptor Sonic turret on top. And the Nod player made the very wise decision. We can see more of those Sonic Dragoons there. The Nod player made the very wise decision there of sending his Air Force after that Sonic Dragoon. The Dragoons are, just like the original Disruptors, they are extremely efficient at punching through buildings and doing line damage. So if you get them into a critical space in your enemy's base, your opponent is going to have a bad time. Oh, we can see the Dragoon squad coming on here. And we can see GDI's Air Force moving out. I suspect they're going to be hunting artillery pieces. Yes, they are. That's also another great way to take care of artillery pieces. If you find artillery pieces that are not protected by anti-air cover, easy pickings from the air. Really easy pickings in that regard. See some Nod guys hanging out there. Ooh, something's going to get paradrop carry-alls there. So this is like the Disruptor Rush from Vanilla, except it's not. Let's see where this goes. Ooh, I think they're gonna punch into the main Nod base here. Let's see where they land. Main Nod base does not have air cover up, so this type of thing can happen. Woo! Yeah, so that doesn't always work. But of course, carry-alls offer mobility. Yeah, okay, so distractions also work really well. You see your opponent is distracted, you hit him when he's not looking. We can see the flame tanks there, the devil tongues, having a really nasty impact on the back of that GDI base. Their flame weapons are effective, very effective against structures. So if you just leave them for a second or two too long, you end up repairing it quite badly. More question here about you can make new models, sprites, etc. that are in the same style with vanilla. It's something from a voxel perspective that I've actively been trying. I've actively been trying to make our voxels look and feel the same as the Westwood ones from 22 years ago. A lot of the artists in the community do absolutely amazing work where they make new voxels that look incredible. I mean, they look like something from 2020, not something from 20 years ago. But from a nostalgia point of view, if you play Tiberian Sun for the nostalgia, which is something that myself and Tiberius, it's a game we grew up playing as kids, and it has a very particular look and feel that you're quite attached to. If you're we just saw the Sonic Dragoons there taking out Nod Harvester very quickly. Anyway, so getting back to the stylistic point of view, if you see, this is where the Sonic Dragoons excel, is they raid, they do damage, and then that is nasty. That is so nasty. So the Dragoons, you can see they're already smoking. They're not very strong. They are squishy units at best. But the amount of damage that they can do in a short frame of time is just absolutely astounding. You see how quickly the infantry actually wipes them out after they have wiped out half of that base. So our Nod player has now taken quite a knock on the economy side, losing refineries and harvesters there. We can see the Shepherd coming in here, the GDI Shepherd. Now this is a GDI hero unit, and what it basically does is it fires rockets. Yeah, that killed it. Shepherd went down very quickly there. Nice man, the air cover there. But the Shepherd is basically a hero unit. You can build only one of them. It flies in, it fires a cluster missile attack. Fires a cluster missile attack, deals a lot of damage to vehicles and structures. You can see an Orca bomber here, doing what it does best, which is killing things in groups. Really putting some proper dents in those Nod artillery pieces. You can see the GDI ground forces here being forced back by the artillery pieces, basically changing. Because the moment you commit those Titans to attack the artillery pieces, the rocket troops will just be able to smash the Titans apart, because the Titans are not capable of killing infantry that quickly. But we see here once again the extreme. That was actually nasty. We see here the benefit of having a strong air force. The return on investment that you can get from spending that money is you can just keep punching your opponent from the top, just keep punching them, and as long as there's no anti-air cover, your opponent is going to keep bleeding. We can see here the Nod. I think the Nod main base has been wiped out. I can see some radar contacts there. Oh yeah, this was another very fun design choice that we made. In the original Tiberian Sun, the Mammoth Mark II is portrayed as a bit of a prototype unit, so you can build one of them and that's it. Now, from a lore point of view, Fading Dusk plays off about 1 to 2 years after the events of the Firestorm Crisis. So the planet. Oh, there we go. GG. Lylak is truly on fire. So from a lore point of view, it's about 12 to 24 months after the end of the Firestorm Crisis. The planet has been ravaged by Kane's Tiberian missiles. Things are just being ruined, going to hell. But there have been some technological advances, and one of the technological advances is the fact that the Mammoth Mark II is now no longer considered to be a prototype, but it is now a standard mainline production unit. So as long as you have money, you can spam Mammoth Mark II walkers. Line chapter there. Yeah, so you can now spam Mammoth Mark II walkers, which allows you to play a very different style of game in terms of GI heavy assault. Well, you see, Lylak is just indicating he's up for one more game, and then he needs a bit of a break after that. Tiberius, I don't know if you can hear me. We can maybe after this next game, we can maybe take a break with the gaming and just have a bit more of a chat until we hit the 4 o'clock mark. Yeah, 4 o'clock my time. I think it'll be 2 o'clock on Danku's time. And then we're done, and then we can take a break until our next session. I had some snacks here that have been completely and utterly forgotten. Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. It's always fun watching Lylak and Tiberius going at it. Their skill levels are very close to each other. So it's not like you don't have that skill discrepancy where the clearly advantaged player needs only 5 minutes to mop up, and then it's GG after that. Well, I can promise you, if you have spent the past 8 months playing and testing the mod, then I'm pretty sure you would be at a very similar level. But yeah, I mean, I think your perspective on this has been quite new. Oh, this is also one of our new custom maps. We have some civilians scatter here. Then on the top left and bottom right of the map, there's a factory there that you can capture. We can see, if you can see the flapping flag, that's usually how you know something can be captured. This one as well. Yeah. So all of our text structures have the little flag animation on them. Your normal civilian structures that you can't do anything with are all inanimate. They have no active animations. There's no movement on them. There's no colors, anything. They're just bland, boring structures. But the moment you see a civilian structure that has movement on it, so in this case the flag, that's how you know this thing can be grabbed, send an engineer into it, you can have some advantage from it. You can see the guys already. Okay, one exception being the radars. They have spinning dishes on them. We actually have not yet given them any nice functions, but that's coming soon. Coming soon with the T at the back. You can see the Nod player sending an engineer here up to the industrial plant. He already knows to grab that. The industrial plant provides you with 25 credits every couple of seconds. So it's not a massive amount of money, but it helps over time. Oh, denied. Yeah. It's closer. Yeah.
Base under attack.
There we go, and that one's been converted now. The downside of the industrial factory. Things are gonna change hands again. The downside of the industrial factory is they give you money per time input, but their biggest downside is they have an incredibly high energy drain. So if you capture them early on in the game and you don't have enough power plants, then you do spend quite a bit of money just getting your energy reserves up again in order to power the industrial plant. Obviously, a structure that gives you free money is great, but if it sucks up all your energy reserves, then you have to weigh up the pros and cons there. Smoke to the industrial plants to make them more recognizable. Yeah, I mean, they already have the flags, but we could probably, I'm thinking if you look at your normal refineries, Tiberian refineries, they've got that little smoke flame puff that comes out. Oh, we can see it actually. You can see the flame puff coming out the top of the tower. We could probably add something similar to that to the industrial factories. Just make them slightly more visible on the landscape. See a very early unpleasant rush here. Oh, and there the Pyro Grenadier comes up, doing flame damage there to the infantry. Really helps against. And the NASCAR squad has shown. Yeah, so that's where Nod has a massive advantage in terms of response speed. No, that was well played. Tiberius is our. Oh, okay, he's called it. Okay, cool. He'll probably join us in chat now while Lylak takes a very much deserved break. Yeah. And then but not just with that massive response time advantage. If anything happens, they can have buggies on the scene within seconds, which GDI obviously has quite a bit of issue countering. So yeah, Tib, if you want to join us on the Discord chat again, or actually maybe set up a 1v1, we maybe let the AI have some fighting in the background while we just discuss it. Lylak, I think take a break. I think you've provided a massive amount of input. Awesome to see, thank you very much. But I think you deserve a break at this point. Oh, Tib is calling in Flame Wheel. Oh, he wants to bruise the young one. This is going to be bloody. Flame Wheel, how are you feeling, man? Flame Wheel, have you updated your last will and testament? He's very quiet. He might be scared. Dear. Let's see if he bites.
Hey, Flame Wheel, are you here? Okay. Or not. Yeah. Well, that's fine with me. Sorry for playing so poorly.
Oh, it was interesting.
I really wanted to show the Devil's Tongues because they're so much better now, and I ended up overcommitting to them.
Oh, that was happening. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what happened. I shouldn't have done that. His space was too tightly spaced and well protected.
I see Flame Wheel is AFK at the moment.
Yeah, I'll just be doing one more with Lylak. So, I guess. I'll be right back.
Okay, excellent. So we'll be wrapping up in 30 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. Taking a break from there. I think it's between Tiberius or Lylak. It's one of them. I'm not sure. They are our main mapping contributors at this point. Okay, yeah. So Lylak says he's in for one more. So we actually have a tiny dev team. I'm thinking now. So main developers would be myself and Tiberius. Tiberius focusing primarily on the multiplayer balancing, and I focus on the art assets in terms of unit art and building art. And then we have our testing team. So that's Lylak, JackoDerp. Flame Wheel took a water break. Yes, lovely. Missed him by a second there. Okay, Flame Wheel, it's fine. We'll tap you in on the next one then when Lylak steps down. So we then have our testing team, which is predominantly Lylak, Jacko, Flame, although he's somewhat engaged with real life priorities as well. Flame Wheel, who's new, he's joined us as one of our voice actors. Fefe. Oh, Flame Wheel, way too much detail, man. Wow, thank you. I'm never accepting corks as a gift from you again. He's wow, funny man. So a lot of our testers also contribute to mapping. I've noticed it's something that Lylak seems to be particularly interested in. We can see here early game. Just quickly getting back to the game. Very much a rush for controlling map assets early on in the game. Get your infantry to guard the tech structures, get an engineer into it, and then you're off. Obviously, if you lose this battle early on, you're gonna have a bad time. Things like the industrial factories, for example, that provide money. If you allow your opponent to control all of these assets and you don't take them or you don't aim to destroy them, your opponent, they get an advantage that starts stacking up and accumulating over time to the point where your opponent can outproduce you, out-economy you, and it becomes an increasingly steep uphill battle to just get anywhere. We can see the infantry bailing. They know that Pyro Grenadier is going to make them pay if they stick around. Merry little chase there. Yes. That's where the expansion nodes come in. There was quite a bit of back and forth on the development side in terms of how do you want to handle base expansion in the mod, right? Because your strategy game, so any type of real-time strategy game has a number of design components, things like base building, resource harvesting, building an army, obviously. And then the question is always, okay, how do you now balance all of those things? Because base expansion, on the one hand, you can get a system where expanding is extremely expensive and slow, and it just, it takes forever to get a new colony up. On the other end of the spectrum, you can have something like the very famous, or should I say infamous, Empire Earth games, where expanding is so easy that when you're playing against a player, it's like trying to get rid of a cockroach infestation. For every one base or colony that you destroy, he already has 3 new ones up. So we wanted to find a balance in the middle there, where we can say we do want to make it easy enough to expand, but we don't want to turn it into a SimCity thing where within 5 minutes your base is covering half the map. And the expansion nodes basically come into that idea of it's a vehicle that you build. So once you have a war factory and a supply depot up, you can start building expansion nodes. Okay, awesome. And then your expansion node vehicle is a very slow, very fragile little vehicle that sort of trundles out to a new Tiberian patch. It deploys, and then once it's deployed, it acts as a construction point. So you can immediately start building or placing other base structures around it. I see Tiberius here is playing a very micro-intensive dancing game where he keeps his units moving in order to prevent the missiles from hitting them. The Orca fighters do a great deal of damage if they hit a target, but they have the problem that they don't always hit the target. So if you keep your ground vehicles moving, let's see here, Pyro Grenadiers, being chased off. Too many disc throwers. Yeah, that's what I was saying in the previous game. Your Air Force can be it's a bit of a gamble. It can be a very good investment, or it can be a very bad investment. In this case, it's for now turning out to be a very good investment. We can see he's really getting bang for his buck with those Orca fighters. Although this GI infantry platoon is also taking a fair share. Here comes the NASCAR squad, and they start arriving. Now the disc throwers are not very weak against buggies. If you have enough disc throwers, you can punch through buggies very quickly and very effectively because of the area of effect damage that they do. But the buggies in themselves are not that potent, so if you hit them enough times, they will crack. We can see here quite the chessboard balancing game here, getting anti-aircraft infantry ready, and then getting anti-infantry infantry ready to chase off that GI platoon. That GI platoon is actually quite well set up. You can see a mixture of light infantry, disc throwers, and then scratch one light infantry. We can also see medics there, really making their value seen. Medics, the guy with a little plus sign hanging behind his butt. They can make quite a big difference to GI squads. You can see the Air Force going in here again. Obviously, if you're playing as, whichever faction you're playing as, once you have a radar station up, which unlocks your new map, you can then also build SAM sites. And once you have a couple of SAM sites up, this type of Air Force raiding and harassing becomes exponentially more difficult because the SAM sites focus literally just on punching your Air Force. Any enemy air unit comes past, that SAM site locks onto it and just keeps spitting out missiles and missiles and missiles. And then raiding raiding tactics become very expensive, because however many aircraft you send into raid, you will guarantee lose 2 or 3 or even 4 of them. But of course, spending the money and the time to get a radar station up and then building SAM sites means you don't spend money on other forces. So once again, balancing. Let's see what the chat is going on here. Naval warfare was a part of the previous Forgotten Wars, the old mod from last year. We have no concrete plans right now to add it into Fading Dusk, mostly because naval warfare logic in Tiberian Sun is unfortunately at present very buggy and very inconsistent. The main issue being pathfinding. Tiberian Sun engine was never designed to have naval combat as a component in it, which means that a lot of times your naval units, even if you use some very clever rules coding to make them work, their pathfinding is still broken. For example, they don't know how to navigate around shore corners. Damage balancing is obviously ridiculously tricky to get right. You can have a battleship with massive artillery cannons that can fire halfway across the map, but if you trap it in the wrong position, then a light infantry guy shooting at it for 10 minutes might sink it. That type of thing. So there are a lot of really tricky design decisions that need to go into getting a functional navy. And because our focus is so heavily on, oh, here we go, Nod Air Force starting to take its pound of flesh from the GI ground units. Because our focus is so heavily on a fun and balanced multiplayer experience, we really don't want to bring naval forces in if those naval forces then break the balance and the gameplay for everything else. Yeah, it's something we've considered, but it's not really a priority for us now. Hopefully, if the gentlemen that are working on the client hacks and the engine hacks, where they're adding new functionality and such, if that project ever progresses to the point where we can have naval combat without the glitches and the issues, then perhaps we will look into it. But for now, it's not on the cards. I wouldn't even say that it's on the back burner. It's pretty much just, yeah, not really a thing for it. Oh yes, that's some sweet vengeance right there. that is some sweet vengeance right there. This is also now with the Ravagers. We can see the Ravagers, they're moving with incredible speed, getting behind the base, away from the Titans. And the Titans having the constant struggle. If they cannot catch a target, they cannot shoot it. And the Ravagers just saying, you know what, I am speed, I'm Sonic the Hedgehog, I'm going to run, get into position, do things, and then run away very quickly because, you stick around too long, you're going to have a bad time. But as long as you have the space to maneuver, the Ravagers are going to keep pummeling the enemy. Of course, the Ravagers cannot protect themselves in the air, so city escape intensified flame. What do you want about it? Someone commenting on the stream here saying in GTA ships aren't broken for some reason. Ships, the balancing that was done in Dawn of the Tiberian Age and the design decisions that were made there are very different. It is possible to do naval warfare. It just involves making certain design choices and certain sacrifices. And we haven't really got to the point where we are ready to make that step due to the limitations that I've mentioned before. So yeah, the thing is, as with any mod or any endeavor in life, I suppose, if you apply your mind to something, if you really, really, really want to make something work, then you will find a way to make it work. I mean, that's life. That's how that's how we send people to the moon. You apply your mind to the problem and then you make it work. For us, however, it's not our number one priority, so we are not really pushing it. Oh, here we can see that, Danku, you actually selected that unit there. That is the Nod expansion vehicle, which deploys into the cloaked tunnel node. There we go. Lylak calling it. Yeah, I think that Ravager rush through his base, that one was a punch in the gonad. Yeah, it was well played. Well played. Yeah. Yeah. They're good at that. They were. I mean, even in the vanilla game, the devil tongues were horrendous against structures. You just, if you got them into the enemy base, things just caught fire and died. Yes. Yeah. One of the big things that we also wanted to avoid with our design choices in terms of new units and then in terms of balancing existing units, one of the big things that we wanted to avoid was that idea of your higher tech units are always better in every circumstance than the lower tech units. Okay? Because what that means is your game devolves into a scenario where people rush in to get the best possible tech as quickly as possible, and then once you have this tech 3 or tech level 4 horribly overpowered units, you just two things happen. Number one, you steamroller your opponent because he can't counter these overpowered units, and secondly, you stop using your lower tech units because they simply have no more function anymore. We don't play, you don't build your tier 1 battle tank anymore because you have a tier 3 one that is cheaper, faster, more health and more damage, that type of thing. So we didn't want to make, from a balancing point of view, we didn't want to make any of our units become obsolete the moment a better or a higher tech unit is available. So that's why even in the late game, when you have things like the Sonic Dragoon, which if I remember correctly is a tier 3 unit, even at that point, even at that very advanced point in the game, your earlier tech units still have a use. They still have a role. They still have important functions that they fulfill on the battlefield. And I think, yeah, from a balancing point of view, that has been challenging. I think we just need to change. Okay, Flame Wheel. Yeah, you can't play random, unfortunately. Otherwise, excuse me. This is one of, I think this one was made by Flame. No, so this is Tiberius. This is Tiberius. We can see a very big cityscape there to the north, a Tiberian field in the middle. And then, if I remember correctly, there are some factories and things hidden, tech structures hidden in the middle there. So whoever gets into the city first and establishes a presence will have a very clear advantage for the rest of the game. So. I don't have a factional preference. I have more of a how can I say, a strategic preference, and my strategic preference is always for what's happening to Flame Wheel. Is he not? We lost him. He might have desynced. Game's not booting up despite rating up. Oh, okay. Yeah, client issue probably. Yeah, I might need to restart this one. I think he probably glitched out there for a moment. Yeah.
Player was defeated.
Okay, so the short answer to that is yes. GDI gains the scout drone, that little quadcopter UAV, The scout drone is a very cheap infantry unit that you can build right from the start. So the moment you have a GI barracks up, you can build a scout drone, and the scout drones provide stealth detection while they move around. So the moment that you have stealth drones and you know that there's a nod base somewhere, or a partially stealth nod base, you send your reconnaissance drones in that direction, and the drones will be able to reveal them. Obviously, if you want a massive area of effect stealth detection, then you still need to build your classic mobile sensor arrays. You deploy them, and you get a massive radius of stealth detecting. But for more, how can I say, short-range stealth detection on the move, where you don't necessarily have the time or the money to invest in a mobile sensor array, your reconnaissance drones will fill that function very well. Obviously, Nod knows this, so a clever Nod player, once you've stealthed your base, you will deploy a couple of SAM sites on the perimeter of the stealth field, and whenever you see reconnaissance drones approaching, you will make sure that those reconnaissance drones do not survive. Obviously, that will then tell the GDI player, if you see a SAM site popping up, killing your drones, and then disappearing again, that's when you know there's something going on. Yeah, and the thing is also, because they are cheap and because they have this stealth detecting ability, they stay relevant for the entire game. Even if you get to the point where you can build Tech 3 units and you can build your mobile sensor arrays and all that stuff, the reconnaissance drone still stays relevant by virtue of being, number one, cheap, and number two, being mobile. You spam them, you can spam out 2 or 3 of them from your barracks, tell them to fly off, and then you can literally just sit and watch them and see what they show you on the map. And whether you're in the early game or the late game, that ability stays useful, so the unit stays relevant. Which for us, from a design and balancing point of view, that's a very important element. We don't want obsolete units. So yeah, I think we managed to get that right. What's happening in the chat?
Yeah, apparently Flame Wheel has some technical difficulties. So yeah, I guess, I mean, we've got 5 minutes left anyways. So let's just take a break, and then we can come back for some co-op. What do you say, Danku? Yeah, let's say a half an hour to an hour. All right, cool. So yeah, see you then.
10 minutes. Okay, cool. All right, cheers, Danku. We'll see you again in 30.
Thanks for joining, guys. I'll be back up in 30 minutes. Let's drop the stream down and pop it back up just to make sure that the video is nice and segmented for everyone. So yeah, see you in 30. Peace.